let's open the floor now to all the questions that you have noted down during the 4 presentations that we had from Christina and Eva, from Paul, from Akef, and from Nejra. So you can always indicate in the participants list by just raising your hand there or coming in real life, but I cannot see all of you at the same page. So raising your hand in the participant portal works best for allowing me to give you the floor. Okay, I see a couple of questions already. Maggie, I saw you were first. Please come in.
Yeah, I think Umut was before me, but I'm sure you won't mind.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right. I'll go first.
Okay, but it's positive discrimination. We go to you first.
Yeah, yes. So thank you all for our talks. They were really fantastic. And I think I have questions for you all, but I'll leave some questions for other people. If I could ask Eva and Christina, are you there? I just wanted to ask Eva and Christina about the work they were doing in the refugee homes. And I was really interested in how your circus activities might really be challenging very powerful notions of time, about using time productively, or thinking about time as kind of only around labour production. And how your circus activities kind of break that waiting time or stagnant time. I was really interested in that.
Can I suggest the following? Because I now see 4 or 5 hands. Let us just collect the questions, collect any questions that everybody has, and then I'll give everyone the floor to respond quickly to the question. So then after that, I go to Christina and Eva, to Paul, to Akef, and to Nejra, so that you can have a quick response. Well, let's first take all the questions. Maggie, did you have more questions than this one, or no?
I'll let other people ask.
Great. Umut, please.
Hi again. Well, good afternoon. I had 2 questions actually. One is to the first presentation. Well, the first and Nejra's presentation. The other one is to Paul. The first presentation is, I mean, in your countries, Slovenia and Croatia, mostly we face the fact that the politicians saying, oh, well, these people, they don't want to stay here in any case, they all want to go to Germany. Based on your experience, I'm just wondering actually to what extent this is correct. Do people not really want to stay, or do they not really find the conditions that would make them stay? The other question is to Paul. And Paul, I was just wondering, actually looking into your pictures, I was wondering to what extent they were able to communicate and engage with the people who were born and raised in Glasgow. Like, do you organize these events as only for migrants, or do you mix them with people who are born and raised here? The reason why I'm asking this question, actually, I'm just wondering, as we've been talking about the Scottish accent since the morning, whether Scottish accent evolves into an inhibitor for the newcomers to express themselves, even if they speak English, or does the Scottish accent actually evolve into kind of more hospitable, let's say, a signifier that they are somewhere else, not in England, but in Scotland? I just wanted actually your experience about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Umut. Ursula, please.
Thank you. I actually have 2 questions that may be interesting to everybody, but the first one is much about what Aki said about communities. So I heard you talk a lot about communities, and I would really be interested in how you define communities. Is this something that you decide, or you know what I mean? It's about defining people. Is this about similar characteristics, or do the people themselves define them as communities? And the second question was about, I mean, all this volunteering is very much about social integration, social inclusion. But do you see any connections? This is a question is maybe interesting to everybody. A connection to structural integration, like when people volunteer, we heard this in the first presentation, then they talk about where to find a flat or how to find a job. So is there a connection between social inclusion and structural inclusion? Thank you.
Thanks, Ursula. Andrea, please. You are muted, Andrea.
And now you can hear me too.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I have two questions, I guess, for all the presenters. Thanks, really interesting presentation. It was really nice to see what you have done. The first question was, I would like to know, I mean, I understood most of your organization involve volunteers from different backgrounds, especially, so I don't remember who mentioned that we start to have people that were user of our activity, we involve them and they become our volunteers, they stay with us for a long time. So I was just wondering, because so far we are talking about all these a good moment where people interact well and so on. But actually, I was wondering, what is the main challenge to deal with a group of people, in the case volunteers that come from a different background, and how you overcome this challenge? There is one set of questions. And the second question is, I noticed also with VOLPOWER in South Europe, we have tended to, and correct me if I'm wrong when we speak about this type of volunteering activity, is we tend to attract people that already, I will define them as already prone, open-minded, really, I'm not gonna, I don't know how to define them, but maybe like people that are easier to include in this type of activity. So I was wondering how you engage people that are more difficult to be involved. And they actually might be the end user that will be more useful, let's say, useful to involve in this type of activity, because there also might be the people that are more struggling, more problem in integrating the society.
Yeah. Thank you, Andrea. A clear question. Let me abuse my position as chair to also ask a question to you, because I have 4 very interesting presentations. I do see also some differences in approaches, which are very relevant also to theory development. This is the eternal dilemma in how to work with diversity. Some of you have a more, well, you work in a diverse setting in a very inclusive way, but you don't address a community, as Ursula mentioned it, as being different or as separate. You just engage in hip hop, for instance, or in the Achieve More Scotland or circus activities. So then the main activity is not talking about different backgrounds. And I think in the Center for Cultural Dialogue, there's also, when you talk about, well, culinary activities can also be cross-sectoral, but there also you talk with each other about, well, does this belong to your background? And I think these are two different ways. One acknowledging diversity and background and differences, one trying to overcome them by something different. And both of them have advantages and can have risks involved. For instance, not talking about diversity can be a risk, but talking about diversity too much can also alienate people. You other people than too much. So I'm aware that it's a little bit an abstract question, but it's a very crucial question if I see the 4 different activities together. So I wonder what you can reflect a little bit on it, what your experiences are. Perhaps you can help us at the academy, at the university, to solve the theoretical dilemma a little bit further. So let's go to the presenters. I give each of you a minute or so. We don't have a lot of time left, unfortunately, but I'm very happy that there were such excellent questions. So for everyone, a minute or so, just pick out the most important points for you, and then we respond to them. So let's start with Christina and Eva. Can I give you the floor first? Yeah.
Yes. So regarding the time question from Maggie, the time and to have a regular practice every week is something stable, and it also, the mothers know that on Thursdays from 4 to 8 kids will be with us. So it's also a moment for somehow think about other stuff, because sometimes families are very big and it's very it's a relief for 4 hours per week to have kids somewhere else. This is what popped to my mind as well as a moment of importance of regularity somewhere. Then the question of Umut, I think, about the transit and whether the refugees really just want to pass Slovenia. I would say it really depends of whether do we speak about a family or do we speak about young men, let's say, because families, I had a feeling that they want to stay in Slovenia because it's a relatively safe country. But there was a big problem about this rule of fingerprints, because where they left their fingerprint, this is where they should be. So then there is a big bureaucratic fascist problem. But I would say that a majority of people are passing, but families and some maybe not so, because people that don't have for a goal necessary Germany, but they just want to change the environment from political, I don't know, whatever reasons they have.
Okay.
Okay,
Christina, Eva, perhaps a last word on anything else?
Christina, you have something to add?
Okay.
I just have one, just a short one for Andrea about how to overcome challenges with some volunteers or some migrants. Well, I would say that the challenge is that they have a very difficult social context or a bureaucratical context. So they have to get that papers and that papers, and then they're searching for work and they need an apartment. So the challenge is actually how sometimes they don't have a lot of time. But to overcome this, it's we just have to be aware that we are not the only organization that is working or are interested in inclusion, and that we are aware how we can help. And also these activities that are every week, this is something that they know, so that when they have time, they can come and they know that we are there. So this is somehow an overcome of maybe busy days. Or
clear.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina and Eva. We move on to Paul, please.
Thanks, Peter. On Umit's first question in relation to the session, our sessions are for everyone. We very much define communities by geographical barriers. We work with the Scottish Government and the local authority, and our activities are very much targeted within geographical boundaries which are defined to us by the local or the national government, and they're for everyone who live in those targeted communities. Specifically, the areas we work in, again, are the areas with the highest child poverty rate, unemployment, crime and antisocial behaviour, unfortunately health conditions, etc., etc. But they're completely open for everyone. We work in 33 different communities across Glasgow and West Central Scotland, and it's very much just because of government policy that some of the communities we work in might be 90% Black and minority ethnic, as opposed to us choosing only to target to work with that community. It is the makeup of that community through government policy which it's taken place. In relation to, sorry, I can't remember who said some of the questions, so I'll try to answer. I think Andrea said one. And in relation to the challenges of bringing volunteers together from different backgrounds, we don't see that as an issue at all. We've never seen it as a problem. We have, at present, a low estimate would be probably 25 different nationalities represented amongst our current volunteers, who all worked across the Easter period at our holiday camps. Yeah, I mean, specifically in relation to issues of people from migrant backgrounds, there isn't much of an issue. And it probably comes to the point that Umit made, that I think is very important. And I think Glasgow is quite unique in how the people from Glasgow and how we approach things, the way that we speak to one another. At a time of extreme political correctness in relation to some parts of society, I think people in Glasgow tend to joke about things and come together and laugh about things which bring them together more than divide them. And I think That is very, very important. And within
very positive attitude.
Yeah, it is. It's very positive. I mean, to be very honest, we have members of staff who come from different parts of Africa who willingly joke with one another about the stereotypes of their parts of Africa that they come from. And it brings them together in relation to discussing it in a Scottish context, yeah. Which then probably answers the question about discussing diversity and integration. That is not that is not a specific focus of our projects. Our project is very much focused on very much at a community level, engaging people, diverting them from negative lifestyle choices, involving them in something positive, and hopefully directing them in the best possible way that we can to have as many opportunities as they can and develop their lives. And that's irrespective of migrant, born in Glasgow, raised in Glasgow, irrespective. And we very much treat it on that basis, because we've had a lot of problems with projects nationally who specifically target communities from Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, and we've seen that create problems within communities as a result of that. So we don't do
very different approach. Paul, I'm afraid we need to move on. Thank you so much for your response. It's very, very clear to both, or to all three questions even, I think. Let's go to Ake from the Hip Hop House, please.
Thank you. I'm just going to dive right into it. So defining communities, two different ways. One way is identity markers. That is kind of how society defines people. And we acknowledge that too, because we see that it is important to, for example, actively involve the queer community, or actively involve the Black community. Well, that is already involved majority, but let's say Asian community, let's say you can even compartmentalize that more. So that's why I also said it's almost like a never-ending quest, because it's basically all around. So I hope it's a little vague, but I hope it answers a little bit. So it's like people define it themselves, society defines it, and we just accept it all. But the main thing is creative expression that usually ties people together. So then you would say dance community, a DJ community, stuff like that. Structural inclusion, we try to help as much as we can with our staff and our volunteers and our teachers. Which, like, I was a volunteer too, and now I'm working, and the same goes for a lot of other people that are in staff. So that is one way, just providing jobs, providing opportunities, gigs, funding, trying to help provide funding for projects, for organizations. So that is a way we try to help, but I think we could try to do more, but that's another story. Main challenge with diverse groups, kind of similar to what Paul said, we don't really see the diversity as a challenge. The main challenge is that there's not as much funding as our reach is. So if we had more funding, we could support our communities way more, and then the problems that arise would be way less. It's not that it's the diverse mix, it's that this particular mix is underfunded. How to engage closed-minded people? Oh, I could.
Very short. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, let me just answer your question, because that was really interesting to me. The cultural inclusion, like, we try to really bring awareness to a lot of problems, because to us it's like, how did people get excluded in the first place? And we need to address that. So then we talk about structural racism, sexism, queer hate. We had talks about decolonizing in minds and institutions in the world. And we try to bring light to these things, so people are aware of why they exclude. So hopefully they don't do that anymore.
Clear. Very well, would be very interesting to engage further in debate about that, but we don't have time. And I want to give the last word to Nejra, please.
I will try to be fast. So why people don't want to stay in Croatia? That was a question from Umut, I think. Well, I cannot say that people don't want to stay Croatia. There are people that find Croatia as a transit country, and they just want to use Croatia to go to other countries of EU. And there are people that really find Croatia as their wanted destination. There is also here this Dublin's regulations that don't really allow them to go to other EU countries, or EU countries can send them back to Croatia. And I think the reason why they want to move to other countries in European Union is only economical reasons. So better economy, bigger opportunities on labor market, jobs. The same jobs are better paid in Germany, as you mentioned, than in Croatia. And that's also the reason why we have locals that are going to Germany specifically.
Okay.
Different backgrounds. Well, with different backgrounds are really welcomed. And how we overcome the challenges with working with different backgrounds is we have people working for Center for Cultural Dialogue, and their function is cultural mediators. So these people are people that know the language that from the countries of origin of people that have been granted with international protection in Croatia, and they also know the culture and the context of Croatia and of these countries from they are coming to Croatia. So with them we easily overcome some potential misunderstandings, etc. And engaging others. I really think that when you work in NGO sector, you usually face and see always the same people in gatherings, conferences, workshops, and similar activities. And I think it's really challenging to reach others who are not maybe so involved in these topics. And we try to overcome this issue by organizing sport, art, and culture activities, because they have this universal language that can be used. And we try to implement activities with these subjects on some very public spaces like central parks, if we organize some sport activities, etc., where in time when we expect that a lot of locals and people that are not primarily involved in these areas will be present. So we will use their presence to get them to be more involved and more motivated to be included in these topics.
Okay. Thank you so much, Nezra. Thanks all of you, Nezra, Akef, Paul, Christina, and Eva, for your very inspiring presentations. I think we could have continued for hours talking about all the excellent and very inspiring work that you are doing in your countries. Thank you so much.